Welcome to r/MaliciousCompliance, where this horrible boss, after firing an employee unfairly, tells her to sue him and see what happens. So she does, which ends in the company folding. You can sue me. I'm used to it. Okay. This happened a few years ago in 2016. At the time, I was working for Company X in a pretty new industry, think less than 10 years, which means that there wasn't a lot of rules and laws yet. I don't want to give too many details just in case. Most of the people working in that industry were passionate and willing to work for free. That's how I started initially, as a writer for another company, until Company X recruited me. See, because that industry was new and mostly consisted of passionate people, it was also mostly built by friends, with barely any knowledge about how to run a business. It worked because people loved it, but it had a lot of problems. Most of all, everything to do with contracts, paying people, and anything HR. The little startup I was working for was no exception, and I got hired under a specific contract that was supposed to be used for people working for a short time period, not a long-term contract. I was okay with that at first. It was one of my first jobs, and I didn't know any better, but I soon realized it was a way of paying less company tax, and that the CEO kept lying to us. We were all under the same contract, promising we could get a real contract next month, every month. Then came the time when I stopped getting paid. And that made me angry. Well, I'm not surprised. I lived in an expensive city and was paid minimum wage on a trashy contract, so passion had its limits. I borrowed money from my boyfriend to make ends meet. And the CEO was using some of the company's money to pay for drinks too when he was out with his closest friends in the company. After 4 months of asking for my money and never seeing it coming, I went to the CEO and told him that I would sue if they didn't pay by the end of the month. Also that I was quitting at the same time too. He replied, "Go ahead, sue me. I'm used to it and I'm not scared. You won't win." That got me so angry that I resorted to suing. Little did he know, everyone was fed up with the situation, and I knew nobody had ever sued him, so I knew what he said was a tactic to deter me. I did my homework, forwarded emails to myself proving that I was owed money, that my contract should be requalified as long-term because it was hidden work, and asked for a large sum as compensation. When they got served, they paid me the 4 missing months immediately, asking me to drop all other charges. I said, F you. After just under 10 months, not that long when it's legal stuff with lawyers, etc., they folded. I got my lawyer's fees paid by them, as well as a substantial sum of money. I was able to pay back my boyfriend with a small bonus and put some money aside too. Most of all, it scared them so much they hired some real staff to do the accounting, changed other employees' contracts to long-term to make sure they wouldn't sue either, and now I hear that people are paid in time, which is my greatest reward. Many employees actually thank me for suing them because of how it improved their own conditions. I now work in a different industry with a real contract, and I make 4 times what I used to make. So even though I'm pretty much banned from that industry, I'm totally fine with it, and better off now. Don't tell me to sue you when you're wrong, because I will. I mean, seriously, how good is that? What are you gonna do? Sue me? Yeah, I am. And I'm going to do it properly and legally and going to absolutely destroy a company. And actually, in the meantime, help out loads of other employees who are getting absolutely shafted by you. It's brilliant. It really is. Ask me to do something, I'm going to do it. Genuinely, though, 4 months of not being paid is actually crazy. Like, yeah, you had to sue in that situation. It's just ridiculous. 4 months of not being paid. I'm not sure I would have kept going after 1 month, to be honest. But you did the right thing. Quitting, obviously, you're doing really well for yourself now, OP. And the thing that is so good about this is you've helped out so many people and you've destroyed some horrible people. So yeah, again, well done. Now moving on to our second story of malicious compliance. Sure, I'll keep my meals under $30 as per the policy. I'll make sure it's $30 every single time. I do a lot of fly-in, fly-out travel for my job. Usually, I'm so busy with work while on site, or I'm stationed somewhere with food options I don't want to waste my calories on, and I don't eat anything the whole day, or just buy a coffee. Our employee expenses policy at work is $30 a day, which is mostly fine. But there are some high cost of living cities, and sometimes my meals go above that policy, because there aren't that many options, especially if I want to eat healthy, which is important when you're constantly on the road. Plus, so many airports have completely shut down their food courts and haven't reopened them yet, so there's hardly any options but fast food. So I submit my expenses 1 month, and I've gone $1.50 over the daily limit, because I treated myself to a coffee that morning, as well as a lunch. I was tired after the god-awful early flight I had to take. The company had recently changed their policy, and now a different set of people are approving expenses. The previous people didn't mind me going over by a few bucks because it balances out with trips where I didn't eat anything. But this new group are absolute sticklers and rejected the expense, citing that I was over the daily limits. I tried to argue I had 10 other visits that month in which I didn't eat a single thing, but they still weren't budging. It really left a sour taste in my mouth. Now, every single visit, I force myself to spend as close to $30 as I can, because screw them. My husband is happy because it means I now bring back, slightly squished but free, food for him. I feel bad for wasting food, but often I just buy a meal and eat a few bites and then throw it in the bin. However, the expense policy is $30 a day, and by God, I'm going to stick to it now. While in the past, I might have billed $100 for the entire month because I didn't bother to eat, I'm now billing twice or 3 times that. I also used to push myself to keep working all day, but now I religiously take my 30 minutes to go and buy some food. So that's 30 minutes less work they're getting from me too. Yeah, I just do not even understand this strategy at all. It makes zero sense to me. What is like an extra $1 or $2 to the company? Like if you go over the $30 budget by a few dollars, who really minds? Especially when you're not doing that daily. But to say, no, you now have to pay all of it because you've gone over or whatever, even the difference, even if it was just a couple of dollars, and antagonize OP to the extent that he's going to go and do this, why? You're just making him unhappy, losing money. What's the gain from that? And also, I assume it's not just OP that this has happened to. If they're this stingy about a couple dollars with OP, they're probably like this with the rest of the employees as well and their lunch money. I don't get the long-term play. It's just weird, and it's going to make for a workforce that's just uninspired and ultimately annoyed. Great management. Now for our third story of this episode. We didn't break any laws. Sure, go to the authorities. This story took place back in the mid-90s. My wife and I were newly married, and our daughter was still an infant. My wife worked in healthcare as a home care nurse, traveling from house to house, looking after people. However, after our daughter was born, she didn't want a job that put her on the road so much, with shifts in the evening. So she applied to be a cleaner at the military base near our community. 2 things about our situation that are noteworthy. One is that my wife is a visible minority, and second, as a healthcare worker, she logs everything as a force of habits. The company that hired her was a national company. The base office usually had 5 employees. One had recently quit because her husband was moving with his military job to another part of the country. So the local boss hired my wife to replace her. The 4 other workers were tight. Louise was the boss, who hired her best friend Donna, Donna's brother Dan, and Louise's niece, Tracy. My wife was a true outsider. She immediately saw that things were not quite equal. Even though my wife was paid from 4 p.m. to midnight, she was home by 8 p.m. every night. She was also excluded from cleaning the buildings that housed the engineering and tenancy offices. Occasionally, when she would clean those offices, she saw her colleagues rifling through desks and filing cabinets, photocopying documents, and other shady stuff. My wife also saw Louise threaten a soldier with extra duties for not opening doors fast enough. Louise's husband was a senior NCO in the unit. But jobs were hard to find at the time, so my wife was willing to accept a little discomfort to her ethics. However, after a few months, the racial epithet started. It started with a nickname, then morphed into slurs, and then rumors about her. They started telling racial jokes without trying to hide it. When my wife complained to the 4 of them that she was uncomfortable, she got called weak, and they threatened her employment. My wife then told them that she would go to the head office. So, she called the head office from work. Stuart from HR dressed down my wife over woman's talk and told her that she needed to thicken her skin and not be too sensitive. My wife countered that she would go to the authorities. Stuart said, "No laws have been broken, so you should go to the authorities. Good luck." Later that shift, she was fired for attitude. So my wife went to the authorities, just not the police. She went to the Human Rights Commission and to the military base headquarters. She gave both photocopies of her logs. The human rights investigation determined that there was a work environment that tolerated racist behaviours. That garnered an apology and an acknowledgement from Stuart, with a smug comment that they will henceforth include a clause about racial sensitivity in their employee paperwork. He even made a comment to my wife that essentially this was nothing. However, behind the scenes, the base had been doing their own investigation. Some of the people whose desks had been rifled in the tenancy buildings have reported that they suspected they'd been snooped through. The dates of some of their reports matched my wife's logs on the date she was there. Louise threatening a soldier was followed up, and it was discovered that Louise's husband had chastised the soldier and arranged for him to do 2 weeks extra duties, a violation of an abuse of authority statutes. The contract with the base required 40 hours of service per week. The base pulled the security and key logs, showing that work was always done by 8 p.m. The base was paying for 40 hours per day and getting 20 hours service. There was a clause in the cleaning contract that stated that federal government human rights regulations needed to be followed. The results of the commission's investigation determines that they were in violation. Other bases were contacted to see what was going on with this company, and they found out others were having similar issues. As a result, the base broke the contract with cause. It was a 5-year contract broken after the 2nd year. Louise, Donna, Dan, and Tracy were suddenly out of work. The next cleaning company came in. All personnel had to undergo vetting for security. All cleaning was done during the day, preventing people from rifling desks. 40 hours was 40 hours, and cleaners were not authorized to engage soldiers beyond casual "how are you" conversations. My wife went back to healthcare. However, every once in a while, she wonders what Stuart thinks of women's talk now. I'm actually a little bit confused as to what's just gone on in this story. Like, what were these people photocopying? What were they doing in the desks? Who are they working for, really? There's like so much more to the story that we're not ever going to know, really. I presume for privacy reasons, obviously, and, you know, being secret and OP not wanting to actually disclose who they really are. It's so interesting, like, what could have been going on here? Why were they doing the things they were doing? Why weren't they just cleaning? Look, guys, if you've got any suggestions as to what might have been going on here and who these people really were working for or what their intentions really were, please do comment down below. A very interesting one. I don't really know. Like, sorry, the more I think about it, the more weird it is. They're photocopying stuff in a military base. That's like espionage sort of stuff, isn't it? That is so weird. I actually have got to know what's going on. Guys, comment your theories down below. Super interesting story once again. And again, OP, of course, you did the right thing. Anyway, guys, that is going to do it for this episode of r/MaliciousCompliance. Really hope you have enjoyed it. If you did, and you want to see more from this subreddit straight away, check out this video on screen. If you're new to the channel and you haven't yet already, do hit this button and subscribe and turn notifications on, because through the month of December, I'm posting 2 videos each and every day. And if you turn that bell on, you're not going to miss any. Sounds brilliant to me if you ask me, which you didn't. Anyway, see you later with another one.